we have more questions from the other schools, then we will get back to you if time allows us. Okay. Okay, who's going to start? Let me start from this corner. Say your name and your question. And then you just pull at your question. Please be loud for the others.
We are sure that despite the economy, we are waiting to come back home already. They want to do, so we should fight in way for so that we can be able to mark.
Now, I said it is very important you write in a continuous prose. But if you write with those marks, we do not penalize. So long as the point has been brought forward, we mark, we don't penalize.
When a receiver represents the significance of the life and experience of Abraham today. Now, how should you answer? Like you gave them the experience of Abraham and then you relate with Christian life.
The question is what?
Explain the significance of the life and experience of Abraham
to Christian life. Now, here you are picking the experience of Abraham. You must tell me what Abraham experienced and what we can draw from him as Christians today.
I am Margaret from John's classes, and when you are taught to state outreach, for example, outreach of President during the time of Amos, and you are given 8 months, are you going to teach 8 or 4 in grade 3?
Now, a very good question. Now, I talked about we have restricted questions and a non-restricted question. For restricted ones, you are given the number, state 5, all right? But if it is open, you can give as many as possible. But it is very important you also look at the marks. If you are asked, give the problems faced by Jeremiah, and the marks are 7. Well, what does that tell us? You cannot give less than 7 points. But because it is open, you can give as many as possible. So that if some are wrong, the ones which are right will be for your benefit. But if it is a restricted one, we will mark the first. If they are 5, the first 5. So, sir.
When I asked about lessons and Christian life, when the show comes from it, so when I answered, I supposed to show the lesson and the failure of so.
You can tell us the failure. The failure. Solomon did this. It was a failure. So, as Christians, we learn that by not obeying God, it is wrong, right? And there is a punishment.
Okay, now we are going to the rest of the schools. We are going to start with Catalembo Center of Excellence. Okay, Catalembo Center of Excellence, unmute from your side and ask your question.
Isa Sayanka from Catalembo Center of Excellence. Question 1. Highlighting is the same as which term, as you have stated earlier. When listing, question number 2, when listing, do we number in Romans or in the form of 1, 2, 3, going down? Question number 3, assist me answering this question on instead how the Africans prepare themselves for death.
Okay, Katelembu, mute your mic.
Yes, thank you for your questions. When you are asked to highlight is just to give. You just give. Then your question number 2, you can number or you may not number. There is no problem when you number. And if you don't number, there is also no problem. It depends on how you are putting your answer down. Then your question number 3, I did not get your meaning.
Okay, Katelembu, you can unmute and repeat the third question.
Question number 3, that how Africans prepare themselves for death.
Pardon, repeat the question again.
How Africans prepare themselves for death.
Yes, how the Africans prepare themselves for death. Now, when we look at the Africans, they knew there is death, but they knew death was not the last resort. They knew there was life, there was another world. And therefore, they were very sure when they are not in good terms with spirits, with their God, there will be a problem. So one thing, they ensured that they did what they were supposed to do. They followed their culture very strictly. They even had to respect the spirits and the ancestors, so that when they go to that spiritual world, they don't get problems, because they were supposed to be punished by those who were ancestors and the spirits. So they ensured that their living in the world was very good. Whatever they were not supposed to do, they were not supposed to do. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to get another question from St. James. From St. James Secondary, you can unmute from your side and ask your question. St. James St. James.
My name is Natasha Subira from St. James, and my question is about the content mastery. What if I have mastered like half of the story? Like, for example, describe the call of Moses. I've mastered half of it, and the other part I've left it out. Will I be penalized or awarded any mark?
Thank you for your question. What I mean with the content mastery is that you have to know about the topic. You must be conversant with the topic. But when you are answering, the points you give do not matter how many they are. However, we have, for each point, we have a mark. So if you are giving 10 points and we need 5, we will get the 5 from your 10. But if the points are 10 and you have given 5, we are not going to penalize you.
Okay, let's get another question from Kasinga High School. Kasinga High School. You can unmute from your side and ask your question. Kasinga.
Okay, when you are given a question which contracts itself, like once you are given a question, like you are told to describe how David achieved the messianic prophet about being the ancestor of David. If you give one answer concerning the prophecy and David, how it was fulfilled, how are you supposed to highlight your points?
Can you come up again?
Kasinga, repeat your question.
Okay, when you are given a sentence which contracts itself, for example, you are told to describe how David as an ancestor of Jesus fulfilled the messianic prophet. How should you highlight your points?
Okay, very good.
Okay, can you mute your microphone? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. We know David as an ancestor of Jesus Christ. Now, if you are taught to describe how he fulfilled that, then you are supposed to give the point that from his lineage is where Jesus came. Jesus is from the lineage of King David. And then because David had been promised that there will be a Messiah through him, then the lineage goes up to Jesus. That is a fulfillment. It is true.
Okay, we have a question from Mua Farm. They asking, are you allowed to highlight a quiz in the answer paper? Okay, I understand the quiz is the question.
Okay. Yes, you can highlight. There is no problem. You can even put some summary notes on the question paper. There is no penalization.
Okay, we have another question from Mngala Secondary School. They are asking, Are spelling mistakes penalized during marking?
For C.R.E, we don't do that. For C.R.E, even if the language is not very clear, what we are concerned with is the point you are bringing out. The point you are bringing out. If we see you are driving to the point, we give you a mark. We don't mark grammar. We even allow the mother tongue interference as long as you are driving to the point.
Okay, let's get a question from Kadekakai. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Excuse
Yes,
me.
Kadekakai.
I'm Francis Mwangi. Excuse me, I'm Francis Mwangi. I
Yes,
have
we
three
can hear you.
questions. One, there is when you asked to give the similarities of both Nehemiah and Jesus. The second one is the kind of reforms a Christian may make in our present churches if given a chance today. The last question is, which are the life skills used by Prophet Elijah during his mission?
Yes, thank you very much, Francis.
Kadekakai, kindly mute your microphone.
Thank you, Francis from Kadakakai. Now, when you are asked the similarities between Nehemiah and Jesus, you are just being asked, what do we find in Nehemiah that we still find in Jesus? For example, these two people were prayerful. Nehemiah used to pray, Jesus used to pray. So you give what can be found in both. Nehemiah had a mission. Jesus also had a mission. Nehemiah was chosen by God to fulfill the mission. Jesus was also chosen and then given by God for the same purpose. Then your question number two, the kind of reforms a Christian can make if given a chance. Now, reforms. We talked about Josiah making reforms. So, as Christians, what can we do in our present life to make reforms, both in the world and in the church? Now, sometimes you will find that the church members are going wrong. They are not doing the right. What can you do? You can talk against their evils just the same way the prophets were doing. You talk clearly. You let them know. Then your last question, life skills used by Elijah. You must know what Elijah did. He faced the challenges. The situation was not easy. He was facing the king courageously. Remember, even telling the king, I am not the troublemaker, you are the troublemaker. So he was courageous. That one is a skill. Thank you.
Okay, let's get a question from Iluvia. Iluvia Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Iluvia? Iluvia Secondary School? Iluvia Secondary School? Iluvia Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Okay, we move to St. James Secondary School. St. James Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Okay, my name is Aaron Macheso from St. James Secondary School. I have two questions. First is this: is it important to quote verses from the Bible? Does it add any marks? And the second one is this: if you have just been asked the differences between outlining and stating, what is the difference between that such kinds of words, outlining and stating?
Okay, kindly repeat the last question.
Differences between outlining and stating. What is the difference between such two words?
Okay, mute your microphone. Thank you.
Okay. If you quote the verses, they do not add value. In fact, we give the verses so that you answer the questions from that extract. So if you are adding the marks, the Bible verse, there is no marks for that. Now, if you are not taught to outline to state in C.R.E, it is just the same thing. There is no difference. You outline, you state, you give. There is no difference.
Okay, let's get a question from Chambuko Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Chambuko?
Excuse me. Can I
Yes,
ask whether is it must to repeat the question on the answer sheet?
No, you are not supposed to repeat the question.
Let's get a question from Kasinga Secondary School. Kasinga?
This is C.R.E from Kasinga High. I'm asking about when you write 2 points in one sentence, will it be marked in the 2 points or it's one?
Okay, you have come up with a very good question. Now, if you develop 2 points in a sentence, you are doing yourself an advantage. Even if they are 3, they will be all marked. They will be all marked.
Okay, let's get a question from Machakos Baptist. Machakos Baptist, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Machakos Baptist, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Thank you. For an instance where you are told to show how Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament prophecies, you have to highlight the prophets if you don't remember. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If the question is asking the Old Testament prophets, you may give the specific prophet if you are sure, or if you are not sure, do not give. But if you are specifically asked a particular prophet, you must give that one. But if the question is open, any prophet, you can give any.
Okay, allow us to answer some questions which have been written to us. We have a question from Katelembo, Center of Excellence. They're asking, relationship between God and human beings. Okay, Katelembo, I think your question is not specific. Kindly specify your question and ask again. We move on to Muvuti Boys High School. Muvuti Boys High School. I can't see your question. Let me go to kcse Secondary School. They are asking, for the descriptive questions, is it a must that the content be direct from the Bible?
Yes, it has to be direct from the Bible. Because if you are asked to describe maybe the call of Abraham, it must come from the Bible, but it is not necessarily you write word by word. You give the concept, what is there. You give it in your own language, but it must be in line with the Bible. Thank you.
Okay, let us get a question from Vota Secondary School. Vota Secondary School, kindly unmute and ask your question. Vota, kindly unmute and ask your question.
My question is, when you are told to describe the call of Moses and then you are told to begin from a certain verse and end in a certain verse and then you exceed, are you penalized?
Kindly repeat your question and do it slowly, systematically.
When you are told to describe the call of Moses, and then you are given a certain verse to begin and then another verse where you should end, and then unfortunately you exceed that, you go beyond that verse, are you penalized?
Thank you for your question. In most of the cases, the question gives the area. But if you give something outside of the area, we are not going to mark that. But we are not going to penalize you for what is right. We are not going to penalize you for what is right. But if you give us something beyond that, it will be irrelevant and there will no marks.
Okay, let's get a question from Kamutanga. Kamutanga Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kamutanga Secondary School.
Okay.
Kamutanga Secondary School, kindly let's have some order.
Okay, I have a question. If you are told to narrate the hierarchy of being, are you going to use a point form or arrows?
Now, you may be not told to narrate. You will be told to give the hierarchy of beings. Now, here, for hierarchy of beings, you can show using the arrows. There is no problem. But we insist you do it in a continuous process. That's why you can tell us on the top, there is God. Next, there is this one, there is this one. But if you use the arrows, we are not going to penalize you, but we don't encourage that. Thank you.
Okay, let's get a question from Changuli. Changuli, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Changuli, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Yes.
Okay, I have a question. Challenges that Abraham faced during his call.
Okay, mute your microphone kindly.
The challenges that Abraham faced during his call, I think the question is not right. There is nowhere Abraham faced challenges during his call.
Okay, let's get a question from Sunrise Secondary School. Sunrise Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Sunrise Secondary School. Sunrise Secondary School, kindly let's have some order. Sunrise. Okay, be more audible, Sunrise. Sunrise. Sunrise, let's have some order, kindly. Sunrise. Sunrise High School.
When you are answering a question, you have to repeat the question.
Okay, Sunrise High School. Let's have some order and repeat your question.
When you're answering a question, you are
Okay. Okay, Sunrise. Sunrise High School. Sunrise High School, kindly just type your question and we'll answer you. Let's move on to Muvuti Girls High School. Sunrise, kindly mute your microphone. Just type your question and we are going to answer you. Muvuti Girls High School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
My name is Becky and I have a question. If you've
Yes,
been told, if you've been told to state the factors hindering maintenance of law and order in Kenya today, then you state without giving any explanation. Will you get a mark or get penalized?
Question.
Kindly repeat the question again.
If you've been told to state 5 factors hindering maintenance of law and order in Kenya today, then you state without giving any explanation, will you get penalized or get a mark?
Okay, thank you. Mute your microphone.
Now, the question is very you don't need to explain.
Okay, let's get a question from Kiseveni Secondary School. Kiseveni Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Okay, it's Caroline from Kiseveni and I have a question. If given a question on context, example, according to Genesis chapter 3, and then you've been told to give the consequences of sin and to give the answer as lifespan was reduced, of which you have said it should be marked. Okay, I'm asking, you have given a question on context, and the question is, according to Genesis chapter 3, then you are told to give the consequences of sin, and then you give your answer as lifespan, of which you have said it should be marked wrong. Then how should we answer the question?
Okay, mute your microphone kindly.
We have another question.
Okay, just unmute your microphone again. Okay.
Yes.
Go on.
What has led to the breaking of kingship ties in modern African? Another question, why do Christians oppose giving half dowry?
Okay, thank you. Mute your microphone.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Now, when you are being asked to give the consequences of sin in Genesis chapter 3, I said you are supposed to give the consequences as per that part, chapter 3 only. I said the lifespan was shortened in another chapter, not in chapter 3. Then your second question, what has brought the breakdown of the kinship system? Now, if you look at the situation we have today, where we have moved from the traditional culture. Traditionally, people were living together as a community. If it were the Kikuyus, they had their own land. If it were the Luyas, they had their country, which was their land. These days, because of work and the lifestyles, we have ceased to be where we used to be. So it is very hard to be together as the Africans used to be. Even the family setup, we are not together. You may have your grandfather being in another place, your aunts in another place, you and your family, you are in another place. So we are not together. So that has brought the breakdown. Now, the education system has also affected us. The work system we have today, people move to different places because of work. So they will have no time to be together. And due to that, now those closely knit relationships are not there today. Then your last question, you have asked why Christians are opposed to giving dowry. I don't agree with you. Many of the churches have not ruled out the giving of dowry. We talking about the continuity and the change of the African culture. Some things have been dying, they have died, but we have those which are still there. When we are making the weddings, when people are marrying, they are still given a chance to give dowry according to the traditional way of life. The church has not ruled out. Thank you.
Okay, let's have a question from Kwantanze. Kwantanze, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kwantanze High School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kwantanze? Kwantanze High School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Yes, Kwantanze. Kwantanze, kindly let's have some order. Kwantanze?
How can you?
Okay, go on.
How can we differentiate between Mosaic Law and Abraham Law?
Kindly repeat your question.
How can we differentiate between Abraham's covenant and Mosaic covenant?
Now, the difference between the Mosaic covenant and Abrahamic covenant is that Abraham made a covenant with God. But the Mosaic covenant is the Sinai covenant itself. So for Abraham, what he did with God, the covenant he made with God is what we call Abrahamic covenant. Thank you.
Okay, let's have a question from Katoloni Secondary School. Katoloni, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Katoloni? Katoloni, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Katoloni Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
I'm Vobek from Katoloni.
Yes, go on.
And I have two questions. One of them is, if you're asked to explain the importance of feasts and holidays observed during the Exodus by the Israelites, is there any, should I give the examples of the feast on festival, then I explain, or what should I do? And the other question is, if you are given a question like this one, what Israel learned about God after the renewal of the covenant? Should you begin with an introduction or not? And the other one, the last one is, when answering, are we supposed to use comma or full stop? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Kindly mute your microphone.
Now, if you are asked the importance of the feasts, you are supposed to give the feast and its importance. For example, there was the Passover. You state the Passover and you give us why was it being celebrated. You give the meaning of the feast. You state the feast and you give the meaning. Number two, it depends on how you frame your work. It will be very good if you introduce your work well, then you give the points, we will be very glad. But if you even go to give the answers straight away, there is no problem and you will still save more time. The third question, when you are answering, it will depend on the kind of question. For example, if you are asked to give the historical books, then you write one, you put a comma, you write the other one, you put a comma, there is no problem. You may even put them in one line, each book on one line, there will still be no problem, provided we are seeing your points. Thank you.
Okay, let us allow us to answer some questions which have been typed to us. We have a question from Illuvia Secondary School. They are asking, when you are explaining a question, is it a must you write a prose form?
I'm getting it. Now, I have said that we encourage students to write in a continuous prose. But if you can put your work otherwise, according to how the question is said, we don't penalize, we mark it.
Okay, they have another question. They are asking, if you are instructed to discuss and due to poor understanding you list, will you be penalized?
Now, the question is saying you discuss. It depends on the marking scheme here. If you are taught to state and discuss, then there will be a mark for stating and another mark for explaining. So if you don't explain, you will not get that other mark.
Okay, let us have other questions from Sunrise Secondary School. The first question they're asking, when answering a question in your answer booklet, do you have to write the question again?
We had answered that question. It is not a must you rewrite the question. The question we know. But if you write, you are not going to be penalized.
Okay, the second question. Given the term compare, do you talk of both the similarities and differences, or the differences alone?
Now, when you are told to compare, you must give both of them. You must give us the similarities are this and the differences are this.
Okay, the third question. Are the terms list, outline, and identify meaning the same in the exam paper when used? And how are you supposed to give the answer?
Now, in C.R.E, and I'm talking about C.R.E, these three terms may be the same. They are the same, but this is only in C.R.E. So in other subjects, it may not be the same.
Okay, there is another question from Iluvia Secondary School. They are asking, in the compare and contrast, or if you are asked to give the difference, like in the creation account stories, is it allowed to make T table to the differences?
Yeah, I said, in C.R.E, we don't come up with the tables. I said, if you are giving out a similarity, let it come out. Tell us in the first creation story, God was the sole creator, just as in the second creation story. Or you tell us in both creation stories, this is what happened. The differences also should come out clearly. Bring the difference clearly. We want to know the difference in first creation story. This takes place, but it lacks in the second one. So don't draw the T tables.
Okay, we have another question from Decalogue Secondary School. They are asking, how do we express the answer when told to narrate, describe, and discuss?
We said that when you are narrating, you are just giving the story as it is. When you are describing, if it is an extract from the Bible, like describe the call of Moses, you are just writing, you are giving us the picture about what happened. You give it in your own words. And I have also said it is not necessarily you give word by word as used in the Bible. What we want are the points we get from the Bible.
Okay, we have another question from Kamudanga Secondary School. They are asking, is it mandatory for a candidate to use point form while tackling questions with describe, discuss, outline, and explain?
Now, we are saying that we encourage you to write in a continuous prose. But if a question allows you to give your answer in point form, you do it. We are not going to penalize anybody. It depends on the question.
Okay, we have another question from Decalogue Secondary School. They are asking, relate the significance of the event that took place when Jesus was on the cross. Lesson Christians learn about Jesus from the event.
Now, here we are specifically dealing with 313-1. This is our question of paper 2.
Okay, we have another question from Iluvia Secondary School. They are asking, in case you number your answers, what are you supposed to? Are you supposed, e.g., to use Roman form or alphabetical order or numbers?
Now, we are saying as much as possible, write in a continuous prose. But if you number, there is no problem. Use whichever method you want. Either the Roman numbers, number 1, number 2, and hyphen, we are going to mark your work. But we are stressing we encourage students to put their answers in a continuous prose.
Okay, we have another question from Changuli Memorial Secondary School. They're asking the importance of Decalogue.
The Decalogue just means the 10 commandments. And what is the importance of the 10 commandments? It is the law of God. It is used to guide the people of God.
We have another question from Illuvia. They are asking, in the Old Testament, we refer God, while in New Testament, we refer Jesus. What if you confuse the two while there be a penalty? Will there be a penalty?
We find that Jesus is talked about in the New Testament. And this is a mistake many students do. A question may be very clear. Give the lessons we learn about God from a particular instance. Then a student, in the answering of the question, he uses the word Jesus. We are going to mark, because that is just a confusion. And after all, God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are the one. We will understand this one as just misplaced the word Jesus from God.
Okay, we have another question from Moore Farm Secondary School. They are asking, please give us the failures of King David.
King David is known to be a very good king, a very good leader. Even he is the ancestor of Jesus, but he failed in some areas. For example, he took Uriah's wife. That was our failure. Number two, if that was not enough, he led Uriah to be killed. That was a failure. Number three, this is a person. This is a king who was fighting the other nations so that he takes over their land. Although God was allowing it, he was not allowed to build the temple because of that blood, a lot of blood which was shed through him.
Okay, we have another question from Decalogue Secondary School. They are asking, explain 5 reasons. Just a minute. Okay, the question from Kadekai reads as follows. Explain 5 reasons why the Bible was written after the death and ascension of Jesus Christ.
Okay, this is a very good question, but it applies in paper 2. In paper 1, we don't talk about Jesus.
Okay, we have a question from Cheney Baptist Secondary School. They are asking, when you are told to differentiate, is it appropriate to draw a table?
We have already answered that question. We have said no, never draw a table in C.R.E.
Okay, let's get a question from ABC Iveti Hills. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. ABC Iveti Hills. ABC Iveti Hills, kindly unmute your microphone.
I'm Sharon from Betty Hills, and I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Earlier, you said that in paper 1 C.R.E, it only cuts across from 1 work and from 3. And how is it in that in kcse 2016 there were 3 questions on form 4 work? And another question is, which tenses are we supposed to use when we are answering our questions? Thank you.
Repeat your question 2.
Kindly repeat question 2.
My question 2, I was asking, which tenses are we supposed to use? Is it present or past tense when answering our questions? Thank you.
Okay, ABC Materials, kindly mute your microphone. Kindly mute your microphone. Thank you.
Now, in C.R.E, we have said paper 1 is tested on the Bible and 8 years. But the form 4's work, we have some areas which may touch on form 1's work. So if a question touches on something in form 4, it does not mean that one is form 4's work. No. The form 4 course tests number 5 and 6 of paper 2. Then your second question, the tense used, it will depend on the type of question. For example, if we are asked, what do Christians learn about God from the call of Abraham? You will write Christians. It is now the present time. Christians today learn that. It is the present. But a question may refer you to give something in the past, like how did the Africans do? You can write the Africans used to the past tense. So it will depend on the kind of a question.
Okay, kindly allow us to get more questions from the host school, then we'll be back to you. Okay, anyone else with a question? Let me begin from the front line.
And my question is, now when you're narrating a story, let's say it's the call of Moses. Now when you choose to write in point form, at the end of the sentence you have to give any confession and comma, and just give a stress.
Whatever you do, you use the commas, you use words, there is no problem. The examiner will read it through your work. The examiner has to read it through your work.
I am Rose from Mosaic. I have a question. For example, you're given a question that says, how Christians play the role of prophets today? Are we supposed to read the duties of a Christian only or how Christians play the role of prophets today? Now, when answering, are we supposed to just say the duties of a Christian or? And I have a second question. The way you're given us, the way you're told us that we have the right to know, we have a direct appraisal. If you have, for example, you find that number 6 is there for you, you start with it. But like in business, for example, you're doing number 5A, you can do number 5A, then you do 4B. Is it allowed those things they are?
Now, let me begin with your second one. Now, even if you mix them and you number them very well, there is no problem. You can number number 5A, and you go to number 4B, we will go through. We will look at where is your number 5B, and we get it from the back or from wherever. We are saying the examiner has to read through your work. Then your first question, can you repeat? Okay. When you are asked how Christians play the role of the prophets, first you must understand the roles of the prophets. Then now you are just applying. That is an application question, right? Like what was Amos doing? He condemned evils in Israel. So Christians likewise can condemn the evils in the society today, like Prophet Amos. Christian should also tell the rest the judgment which is to come because of their sins, just the way the prophets were doing, right?
If you feel like you don't really want to take that format, and go to another question. And when that's the other question is much more difficult, you can go back to the other, and when you cancel, you write not cancel. So I'm asking C.R.E.
Now, that is a very good question. If you answer and you find that this work is not good, you are allowed to cancel. But as she is saying, she is putting it very well. If you write not cancelled, it means what? Now the candidate has given me room to look to mark this question. So you can do that. We have never seen that, but the way you have put it, it is very correct. This one is not cancelled. We have another one here. Now, so I'm going to answer. Now, the way you answer questions in literature, so you write in a continuous prose. A sentence, you put a full stop, you go on, you express yourself. Sasa, that is the meaning of a continuous prose. The way you write a composition, huh?
Okay, my name is Catherine Baida, and I have a question. How can you answer this question? State the meaning of the biblical accounts of creation in Genesis chapter 1 and 2.
The meaning.
Yeah.
The meaning. Now you know the account, the first creation story and the second creation story. So the question now is, what are you learning? What is the meaning? What is coming out from there? For example, we learning God is the sole creator. So, all right, the accounts bring to us that God is the sole creator. It brings also that this God gives food to the human beings. He provides the source of food for human beings, right? It also means this creation story has it that the human beings are given responsibilities, like you till the land, you subdue it, you multiply. Those are the responsibilities given to man in the creation stories. So.
Maybe once if you are asked to For instance, our church you do not speak directly and such the book of it is another God.
You name.
Name or repeat, but do not speak directly.
Okay. Now, the question is, you list or you name maybe the historical books. Even if you begin with the last one, it is a book. So it is not a must they follow the way they follow in order. But if they are historical books, let them be there. We are going to mark it.
Okay, as another question is you have said when you are given a question which is not restricted and you are given like 7 points and you write more than 7 points, like you write 10. And once you have written 10, let's take for example you have got the second, you have got the third, the fourth, and the last one, the ninth, and the 10th you have got. Now the examiner is he supposed to mark all of them and then he counts?
Now, I have said if it is non-restricted, you can write as many points as possible. The examiner will mark the points up to the maximum. But if it is restricted, even if you wrong the first 5, and you were asked 5, you wrong all the 5, and my eye can see the 6th one is right. I'm not supposed to mark that one. I'm not supposed to mark that one. We talked about the rule of the rubric. So you must be very careful when choosing the question. What I would advise you is, first, as you read the questions, write, mark, this one is a restricted question. You can even write somewhere, like here, name 8. You can write here, restricted, all right? And here you are giving only 8 points. Sasa. The rest, you can go as far as you can. Answered?
Sorry, I'm going to take you back to my question. I had asked you if you are taught to name or repeat. Not like the way you are going to
Okay.
but so that you are not supposed to write direct. You are like to start like the book of Judges, the book of Decalogue. Are you going to be penalized because of starting with the book or when you write direct?
You are not going to be penalized. You will not.
When God states that it's not someone invited to the first and second, and you don't state them, you state them in one as one. Are you going to be awarded marks for one?
Very good. You have come up with a very good question. First Samuel is a book on its own. Second Samuel is a book on its own. If you tell me Kings, you are wrong. We have the first Kings and the second Kings. Sasa.
And so I am the question of, let's say you have the qualities, looking at the qualities of King David, that Christian life, are you supposed to write, let's say there is obedience and obedience, which are you going to write? Then is it okay if you write a one-word answer?
Okay. Now, the qualities of King David as a good leader for Christians today. Now, you look at what were the qualities of King David? And now, from him, what can we learn? We said that like he was honest, right? We see him as a person who was ready to repent. When he did the sin he did, he was repentant. So for us, Christians, we have to be repentant like King David because he repented. Then your other question? Now, I have said it will depend on the kind of a question. Some questions will require one word answer, like the ones we are talking about. Huh? The books, the historical books. So you are going to write Joshua, and the answer is correct, and you cannot put it any other way, right?
If you are given an answer, and in the marking scheme is not there, you can correct. Look in right or
Can you come up again?
okay. I'm asking if your answer is correct and the marking scheme is not there. You do right.
Now, third one, you leave it. We follow the marking scheme we have. But we first go and look at it, right? And we remove some things which might be wrong, and we add others which are missing. So that when we begin to mark your life scripts, now we have something good, right? The marking scheme may come with some things which are not supposed to be there, or it might lack something. Even as we go on marking, we might find students are developing a particular answer which is correct and it was not in the marking scheme. We are allowed to sit and we bring it in board. It becomes a part of our marking scheme. Sasa, yes.
Okay, anyone else have a question? I'm going to pick more new questions, then we go back to the rest of the schools, then we come back. Okay?
Sarah, I have a question. When you are going to describe like the call of Moses, then you skip one step and shall continue with the speaking of marking right.
No, I have said the student work has to be marked. Now, the description of the call of Moses or Abraham or whichever, we give points. What are we going to mark? We mark this point, we mark this point, we mark this point. So if you skip two, now you have the rest, we are going to mark them.
Graduate to state the significance of the life and experience of Abraham to Christian David. Do you give life experience of Abraham and then relate with Christian life?
You can do that. You can do that. It is very important, right? But you can do it in a very good way. Don't waste a lot of energy, all right? We know that experience Abraham went through. So, then you can say Christians are supposed to do this, like Abraham. You see, you are using a very short thing, like Abraham. then you are coming out clearly.
I have a question. I am not this. I went to my source. It was covered. I get to ask the Israelites of linking with two different opinions. Explain how the Israelites were linking in two ways.
Come up again.
It was covered. Elijah accused the Israelites of linking with two different opinions. Explain how the Israelites were linking in two ways.
Now, yes, the Israelites were leading with the two limbs. How? These are people who were supposed to be God's people, right? They had the law with them, all right? But what had they done? They followed other gods. They left God. They left the covenant way of life, all right? Yet, they were still looking at Yahweh as their God. They did not stop worshiping Yahweh. They were doing it, but they were doing it in funny ways. For example, idolatry was there, which was not supposed to be in the covenant way of life, right? These are the people who were even selling the slaves, like the story of Amos, and they were not supposed to be doing so. And yet, they are still worshiping Yahweh. So they are doing this, and they are still on the other.
Okay, we have a question from Iluvia Secondary School. They are asking, in case of bad handwriting, will there be a penalty?
It is very important you write in good handwriting. But if your handwriting is bad, it is bad, and we will strain to go through. But that bad handwriting must be read. We must know whatever you are writing, you are putting down.
Okay, they have a second question. Can you briefly explain the difference between relevance and lessons learned?
When we talk about relevance, we are talking about the importance of something. How is it relevant? Now, when we are talking about the lessons, what do Christians learn? Now, we have the content with us. From it, what do we learn? What do we learn? There is something we can pick from the incidents. So those are the lessons learned. For example, Christians learn that breaking the law is bad. Breaking the law is punishable by God. But the relevance, maybe the relevance of maybe breaking the Sinai covenant, we see God, or the failure of man, the fall of man, the relevance. It is showed us that God brought some punishment to people, right? To people, things which were not supposed to be there, like death came. It was not supposed to be there, right? These people were supposed to work. Work was not there. We were supposed to be picking food, right? Giving birth was not supposed to be painful, right? But now, because of the sin, the child bearing came with a lot of pain.
Okay, we have another question from Kamutanga Secondary School. What if you are asked, describe the call of Amos?
Describe the call of Amos. You are supposed to give the call as it is, the call.
Okay, another question from Katelembu Center of Excellence. They are asking, when you are asked about historical books and you give your answer as 1 Kings, 2 Kings, will you be awarded 2 marks or 1 mark?
Now, I said in such a case, 1 Kings has a mark on its own. Second Kings has a mark on its own.
Okay, we have another question from Machakos Baptist. They are asking about the failures of King Saul.
Now, King Saul was the first king. He was chosen when the people demanded for a king. But he failed. He failed. And that's why God rejected him. One thing he did, he consulted, yes. Another one, he failed to follow the instructions of the prophets. He was told, don't go to war. Then he went. Another thing, he took the role of the people who were supposed to give a sacrifice, the role of the judges. He did it himself, and he was not supposed to do that.
Okay, we have another question from Machakos Baptist. They are asking forms of corruption that Elijah could condemn in Kenya.
Now, for Elijah, we know that he dealt with corruption, and we are given the story of Naboth's vineyard. Now, in Kenya, as we are today, what is the situation? Corruption is still there. We have it. We have it in many places, maybe in schools, in the government, even in the church, it is there. And we also have very many other forms of corruption. Are our courts right? Do we still bribe the judges? Now, when we are looking for places for work, how do we do it? Some go to the extent of asking money so that you are given the job. There are so many forms of corruption as we are today in the country and in our society.
Okay, we have another question from the same school. They are asking, is it a must to identify the 10 plagues? Now, the question is not complete. I would like to request them to rephrase the question again. In the meanwhile, let's get a question from Kasinga High School. Kasinga High School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kasinga High School.
Yes. Yes. When we are talking, you have said, when you are describing like the call of Moses, when you skip an event like he saw the burning bush, you skip and say God. You say God told him to remove the sandals. Let's say you skip an event there in between. Will you be penalized?
We have said you will not be penalized. What we look at the points we are going to mark. If you meet this point, it is a mark. If you meet this one, is a mark. It is not a must. The events follow each other. But if you know the Bible very well, as I said, you will give the events in order very smoothly. But to bring out the points, you skip some, we will mark the rest.
Okay, let's get another question from Muvuti Girls Secondary School. Muvuti Girls Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Muvuti Girls, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Muvuti Girls. Muvuti Girls. Okay, we move to Mua Farm Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Mua Farm Secondary School. Moore Farm Secondary School. Moore Farm Secondary School. Moore Farm Secondary School, kindly ask your question. Moore Farm Secondary School, kindly ask your question. Moore Farm, kindly ask your question. Moore Farm. Okay, let me go back to Muvuti Girls High School. Muvuti Girls High School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
I have two questions. The first one is, are you allowed to echo the question if you are asked a question on which requires you to think critically about it? And the second one, when you are told to describe the call of Amos, are you supposed to write, are you required to write the king who was in possession of the kingdom? And the third one is,
Can you repeat your first question?
my first question was that, are you allowed to echo the question or just go directly to the answer?
Well, I have said you are not supposed to write the question again. You are wasting time. But if you write, there is no problem. Then number two, when you are not to describe the call of somebody, we expect you to give out the events during the call. Like when we are talking about Prophet Jeremiah, we find that he had a conversation with God one-on-one. So you will write to us what they were saying, what God was telling him, and what Jeremiah was answering him. You just give us the story as it is in the Bible.
Okay, let's get a question from Katoloni Secondary School. Kindly, Katoloni Secondary School, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Hello.
Katoloni Secondary School.
Hello.
Yes, go on.
I'm asking how Moses was prepared by God in leadership.
Yes, when we look at Moses, there are so many things he underwent, which was were supposed to assist him in his mission. For example, he is born when the Jewish young boys were being killed, but he was not killed. So God prepared him by allowing him not to be killed so that he may take up the mission. Where did he go? He went to Pharaoh's place, and a maid was looked to take care of him. His real mother was the maid. So the mother must have told him, you are not an Egyptian, you are a Jew. And you can see what the Egyptians are doing to your kinsmen. Now, he grew in the palace, so he knew the leadership qualities. He learned the skills to become a leader from the king, from Pharaoh himself. Now, when he killed an Egyptian, where does he go? He goes to the wilderness, from the palace to the wilderness. There, life was not easy. And he is the person who is going to lead the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness. So it was a way of preparing him to stay in the wilderness and maybe to know some roots, because he will use the same roots. Thank you.
Okay, now kindly, if you allow me to get 3 more questions from the host school, then we wrap up the session, okay? 3 questions.
My question is, when you observe the teaching, teachings of Abraham. Now, will you raise the what Amos said on the lesson?
Now, when you are asked the teachings, what did Amos teach? Now, for Amos, we came up with the 6 things, right? He taught about 6 things. The first one was, you give me one. Social justice and responsibility. What did he teach about that? So you are supposed to give that teaching, all right? You go to the next one, there are 6. So you are supposed to give those, unless you are asked now, the lessons we learn as Christians today from the teaching of Amos. Now, what can we draw as Christians from now? Those themes, those lessons, those teachings Amos taught, right? There are 2, right? The teachings themselves and the lessons Christians can learn.
My name is Sharon from White School. If you are told to see the downfall of the churches, the problem that causes the downfall of the churches. If you see tribalism, corruption, and nepotism at once, will you be told that you have repeated the same answers?
Now, you know, those things touch on the same thing. Nepotism, tribalism, hiyo ni kitu tu moja. Sasa, so we mark it as one. The whole of that is 1 point.
Yes, I have another question. When you are being told, you state reasons why someone is against education in Israel. Is it a must to start with the king, like the king would make some of their sons to be his children? Is it a must to start with the king would?
Okay, it is very good. Now, when you read the Bible very well, someone talks about the dangers of having a king. So you write, the kings will make their sons to become soldiers. The kings will make their daughters to become what? The maids, the perfumers, and all that. All right? The kings, some of the kings will not follow God's law, right? Just what Samuel gave, right? Now, at this point, I'm grateful to have been given this chance to share with you. And as C.R.E. students, I wish that we come out with the best. C.R.E. has been leading over years, but of late, we are lagging behind. One of the reasons, as I told you, is that the pass mark has been raised so much. So we have a challenge. And we must go back to our position as C.R.E. candidates. So we must work hard. We strive to get an A. And if you must fail, I always tell my students, if you have to fail in C.R.E., fail and then get a B plus. And if we do that, we will lead, the other subjects will follow. And with all that, I wish you well. I wish you God blessings. And if chance comes, we will still meet again. Be blessed. Thank you.